So, what's the best electric leaf blower for car drying? Hi, my name is Derek McCurry, and I'm the owner of Stubby Nozzle Co., manufacturer of stubby car drying nozzles for electric leaf blowers. In this video, I'm going to be comparing some of the most popular and powerful electric leaf blowers available on the market today, including models from Ego, Milwaukee, DEWALT, Makita, RYOBI, Greenworks, Kobalt, and SKIL. I'm going to be running a bunch of different tests to see how the specs of these leaf blowers compare to the manufacturer's claims, as well as 4 key areas, including power, runtime, ergonomics, and price. Here's a rundown of the 13 blowers I'll be comparing in the video. First up is the Ego 765, Ego's most powerful blower. Next up is the Ego 650. Then rounding out the Egos, we've got the Ego 530, their most affordable option. Moving over to Milwaukee is the Milwaukee dual battery blower. This is a relatively new option and Milwaukee's most powerful blower. Next is the Milwaukee single battery option. This has been around a while and is their most popular blower. Moving over to DEWALT, we've got their 60 volt blower, their most powerful blower. And then we've also got the DEWALT 20 volt, their most popular blower. Then we've got the Makita 18 volt, their most popular blower. I don't have the dual battery version yet, but that's coming soon. RYOBI 730, their most powerful blower. The RYOBI 550, their second most popular blower. The Greenworks 730, Greenworks' most powerful and popular blower. The Kobalt 40 volt, the most popular Kobalt blower. And lastly, the SKIL 40 volt. Alright, so for the first test, we're going to measure the force that each blower with a stubby nozzle puts out, and that's going to be measured in pounds. So the way this works is I've designed this cylinder that's roughly 6 inches wide by 6 inches tall to capture the air coming out of the blower, and that's placed on top of a scale here, and then you can see the readout is in pounds. And so we're going to do the Ego stubby first. I'm going to run each of these blowers for about 5 seconds to let the CFM and level out. And I'm going to position it to where the tip of the blower is just inside of this cylinder so that we've got some consistency there. So I repeated that same test for the rest of the blowers, and here's a summary of the results. In first place, we've got the Greenworks 730 putting out 5.8 pounds of force, closely followed by the RYOBI 730, which put out 5.6 pounds of force. In last place is the Milwaukee single battery option, only putting out 2.5 pounds of force, or less than half of what some of the top performers did. All right, so for this next test, I'm going to be pulling airflow and airspeed. Airflow is measured in cubic feet per minute, or CFM, and then airspeed is measured in miles per hour. So these are two of the most commonly advertised specs from the different tool manufacturers, and you're pretty much always going to see it listed on the outside of the box or on the website webpage for the leaf blower you're considering. We will be comparing the advertised spec from the blower manufacturer, the stock tube, as well as the stubby nozzle for all of the leaf blowers here. The device that we're using to pull these measurements is called a pitot tube style anemometer. And unlike these wind vane style anemometers that are often used in the HVAC industry, this device can only pull wind speeds in the 80 to 100 mile per hour range maximum, versus this device can pull wind speeds in the hundreds of miles per hour. It costs about $500. It is a calibrated, highly accurate device, and so it's perfect for this testing that we're doing here. So it directly pulls the wind speed in miles per hour, and then it uses, there's calculation built into the tool that uses the diameter of the tip to calculate the air flow or CFM of the blower. So For this particular blower, the Greenworks 730, I pulled the diameter with these digital calipers, and it's 9.28 centimeters. And then for the test here, I've strapped the blower down to the table with this ratchet strap so it doesn't move at all. The pitot tube is positioned exactly 2 inches away from the tip of the tube or the nozzle. And then it's positioned directly in the center and parallel to the tube here. And then I'm just using a clamp to depress the trigger and the turbo button when it has one. So for all the tests, I'm going to be running the blowers in their top speed setting, turbo button if it has it, and then the batteries are fully charged, fully topped off, 100%. So with that, we'll get started on the first one, the Greenworks 730. Just walking through what's going on here. I'm using this clamp to hold down the trigger and the turbo button. And then on the right hand side of the screen, you see the anemometer is giving us readouts now. So this is our CFM reading. And then I just switched over to our mile per hour reading. And then basically I just repeat the same test with the stubby nozzle attached. So now we've got our CFM reading again. And I'll also pull the mile per hour readout. And the diameter has changed. And here are the results for the airflow test. So quickly explaining what we're looking at here, the gray bars are the manufacturer's claimed CFM output. The blue bars are the actual readouts that we got using the stock blower tube. And then the green bars are the actual readouts using the stubby nozzle. Similar to the airflow test that we just did, both the RYOBI 730 and the Greenworks 730 were the top performers. They were neck and neck for first and second place. And then once again, the Milwaukee single battery blower came in last place. A couple of things that I thought were kind of interesting. The Ego 765 actually didn't do as well as the Ego 650. And I think that's because one thing I noticed when doing the test was that when I first pulled the trigger on some of these blowers, like the 765, there was an initial spike in the CFM and the mile per hour readings, and then it sort of leveled out after 3, 4, 5 seconds. So the values that we're looking at on the screen here are all the values taken at the 5-second mark. I thought that was the most fair way to compare these blowers. Also wanted to point out that the RYOBI 550 and the Kobalt 40 volt blower don't have a green bar because I don't currently offer a stubby nozzle for those blowers, but I'm working on that and those will be available soon. And then another trend you'll see across the board is that you actually get a lower CFM output when using the stubby nozzle compared to the stock blower tube. However, I'll show you in a second that you actually get an increase in your air speed or mile per hour output when using the stubby. And now looking at air speed, we see really similar results to what the airflow test showed. So both the RYOBI 730 and the Greenworks 730 came in first and second place. And then like I mentioned a second ago, across the board, you can expect an increase in air speed or mile per hour output from your blower. When you install one of our stubby nozzles, on average, it's about a 16% increase. So this next test is the runtime test, so we can see which blower lasts the longest, basically. And for this test, I, of course, used fully charged batteries, and I ran each blower in its highest speed setting. So that means if it had a turbo button, I used it. And so I'll show you the results, the total runtime results here in a second, but while I was at it, I figured I might as well pull the CFM and mile per hour readings every minute, which is pretty brutal. So, I mean, this test took well over 6 hours to do every blower, both with the stock tubes and the stubby nozzles. But I think it'll be really interesting here to look at how the blower readings perform over time. And here are the results of the runtime test. So the Milwaukee dual battery blower came out on top. It lasted exactly 16 minutes with the stock blower tube, and then surprisingly a little bit longer, 19 minutes and 44 seconds with the stubby nozzle. I thought it was really interesting that some of the blowers lasted longer with the stock tube, and then other blowers lasted longer with the stubby nozzle. So on average, it was kind of a wash. The average is like 0.5% longer with a stubby. And then some of the poor performing blowers, the Ego 530 and the SKIL 40 volt, basically those are the blowers that had smaller capacity batteries at 2.5 amp hours. And that's why this test is a little bit unfair. So as you would expect, the blowers with higher capacity batteries lasted longer and vice versa. I will say that whenever possible, I used the kit or default size battery that comes with these blowers when you buy them as a kit. But I did not have that size battery for all the blowers. So I've called out the battery size that I used on the left-hand side just so you have a point of reference. Then if we dive a level deeper, we can actually see what the airflow or CFM output of each of these blowers looks like over time, specifically with a stubby nozzle installed. The main trend that you'll notice is that most blowers steadily decrease in CFM output as they're running. So that's indicated by that downward slope of most of these lines. The two exceptions being the Milwaukee blowers. So the Milwaukee dual battery blower and single battery blower both have flat horizontal lines all the way across the runtime, meaning they maintain that CFM output the entire time, all up until the end when their batteries died. The RYOBI 730 blower was probably the worst performer in this regard. So it started out the strongest. It was putting out, I don't know, 530 CFM, but then it dive bombs pretty quickly below the Greenworks blower and the Ego blowers at about the 3-minute mark. So it was the worst performer in regards to losing its power very quickly. And then switching over to the airspeed over time plot, it looks pretty much the same as the CFM over time.
So why use an electric leaf blower to dry off your car? There's really 4 main reasons. The first being it is a touchless drying solution, meaning you're not physically touching your vehicle's paint. Every time you touch your car's paint with a microfiber towel, you run the risk of introducing swirl marks or micro abrasions in your clear coat, which makes it look bad over time. 2 is the high speed of air coming out of your blower allows you to blast all the standing captured water out of areas like your side mirrors and your door handles, your wheels, grill, badges, things like that. 3, it's a tool that you already have. So most folks have a leaf blower that they use for yard work or to blow off their driveway. So no need to invest in a separate tool like a dedicated car dryer that can cost $200–300+. And then 4th, it's honestly just kind of fun. I used to dread the part of drying off my car. That was my least favorite part. Now it's my favorite part, especially with one of our stubby nozzles. So those are really the main reasons that somebody should consider using a leaf blower to dry off their car. All right, so the next logical question you're probably asking yourself is why use a stubby nozzle? Again, I can think of 4 main reasons. The first being pretty simple. It's short. So being short compared to this long stock blower tube that comes with your blower, being short allows you to get closer to the vehicle, allows you to maneuver the tool much easier when you're blowing off the roof, and honestly, it just gives you a much more enjoyable user experience when you're drying off your car. 2. The slightly tapered and smaller diameter tip compared to the stock tube actually increases the airspeed coming out of the blower. So we proved that with our testing in the video, and so you can see what that looks like for your specific blower that you own. 3, they come with a protective silicone blower band tip. So this is a soft silicone rubber, and if you were to accidentally touch your vehicle's paint, you wouldn't cause any damage. And then lastly, I just think they look really cool. All right, for the next test, we're going to be measuring the noise level of each blower to see how loud they are. We'll be pulling the data for both the stock blower tubes as well as the stubby nozzle. The device that we use for this test is called a decibel meter or a sound pressure level meter. This one is a high precision decibel meter. And then the procedure that I'll be following consistently for each blower is I'm going to take the meter, and I've got a 14-inch ruler here, and I'm going to place the microphone at the end, and this is perpendicular to the blower and in line with the intake tube. I'll run each blower for 10 seconds and then set the meter to the maximum setting to see what that maximum decibel reading is. So with that, we'll get started here on the RYOBI 730 CFM blower.
Here are the results of the noise test. The RYOBI 730 was the quietest at 86.3 decibels using the stock tube, 90.5 decibels using the stubby nozzle. The DEWALT 60-volt blower was the loudest, 96.6 decibels with the stock tube and 102.4 decibels with the stubby nozzle. Regardless of the type of blower you use, it's always recommended to use hearing protection.
Right, so the next test is weight. This one's pretty straightforward. I've got a package scale here that's set to pounds, and we're going to be pulling the weights of every blower, both with and without a battery, with our stubby nozzles installed. Before I weigh this, I want to say I think weight is a very often overlooked spec when it comes to considering a leaf blower for this application of drying off your car. Because you're often holding that leaf blower up above your head for a long time, especially when you're up getting the roof and blowing off the sides of the car. So these blowers with large batteries or dual batteries can get pretty heavy after a while.
And here are those weight results. So that Makita 18-volt blower with a 4 amp hour battery was the lightest at 5.48 pounds. And then the Milwaukee dual battery blower with 2 extended capacity 8 amp hour batteries is a whopping 10.16 pounds. Another spec I thought would be interesting to share is the length, as it plays a big factor in the ergonomics of the blower. So the DEWALT 20-volt blower was the shortest at 14.5 inches with a stubby compared to 31 inches with the stock tube. And funny enough, the DEWALT 60-volt was the longest, 27.5 inches with a stubby, 37.5 inches with the stock tube. Here are the current prices for each of the blowers that were tested. The least expensive option is the SKIL 40-volt blower. The kit with a 2.5 amp hour battery comes in at $119. And then the most expensive option is the Milwaukee dual battery blower. Just the tool is $299, and then the kit version with 2 8 amp hour batteries and a charger is $697. Of course, these prices are subject to change as the retailers run sales, but this should provide some perspective. Now, if you're looking for the best value, I've done the math here for you by calculating the price per CFM and the price per mile per hour. The SKIL 40-volt blower is the best value, and the Milwaukee dual battery blower is the worst value. So to recap, the Greenworks 730 had the highest airforce and highest airflow. The RYOBI 730 had the highest airspeed and was the quietest. The Milwaukee dual battery blower had the longest runtime and the most consistent CFM and mile per hour output. The Makita 18-volt blower was the lightest. The DEWALT 20-volt blower was the shortest length. And the SKIL 40-volt blower was the least expensive and the best value. With all that said, any of the blowers tested in this video are powerful enough to effectively dry a vehicle. My general recommendation is to buy a blower for the tool brand you already own batteries for and look for an advertised spec of at least 450 CFM of output.
I hope you found this video helpful. If so, give it a thumbs up. If you have any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to answer those in the comments section below. If you're interested in purchasing a stubby nozzle or any of the leaf blowers mentioned in the video today, I've left those links in the description. Thanks for watching.